the Goblet of Truth, which corresponds to the teaching of truth, the teaching of spirit, the teaching of life, makes it clear what the true face of creation is with its laws and recommendations, giving rise to true love, peace, freedom and harmony. And the teaching of the prophets, from which the Goblet of Truth results, provides information about the creational laws and recommendations which appear in various forms and show that false religions, sects, philosophies and ideologies amount to the most evil thing that could ever be concocted, come what may. However, this malignance has been practiced since time immemorial and remains so in the present day, determining the might of religions, sects, ideologies, philosophies as well as politics, which down the ages have exerted huge constraints on human beings in order to control them. All in all, they have kept human beings in bondage to ensure their blind belief and obedience to the political, social, religious, sectarian, ideological and philosophical pressure that is exerted on them. In the final analysis, however, this represents the downfall of humanity, together with the cultivation of overpopulation, because truly the human beings of Earth and their teeming masses are only now individually capable of using and living their true and creation-conditioned knowledge of the teaching of truth, teaching of spirit, teaching of life and therefore also of the creational laws and recommendations in absolute, consciousness-related freedom. Therefore, in order to avoid the downfall of humanity in the new millennium, in the third millennium, it is necessary to find the way back to creational truth and the creational laws and recommendations, to follow them and therefore to make everything new with regard to learning and knowledge of the effective plan of creation. However, this can only happen if the human beings of Earth once again find and follow the roots of creational truth, and therefore the creational laws and recommendations. The new time, the new age of Aquarius, offers the opportunity of making a new start through the Goblet of Truth, through the teaching of truth, the teaching of spirit, the teaching of life, although this teaching, which has been kept in readiness since time immemorial by the true prophets, will by no means be exhausted, because beyond the known teaching it continues endlessly and will never run out for human beings. For the human beings of Earth, everything has developed into a pure might-oriented thinking, intolerance and contempt for women as well as enmity to nature, denial of the truth of creational laws and recommendations as well as to rampant overpopulation which is leading to the destruction of Earth's climate and nature. Furthermore, the might-oriented thinking practiced by those in government and by the evil gevalt of religious belief of any kind has also resulted in a practically inestimable suppression of consciousness-related freedom. This manifests itself overall in an abysmal contempt for natural as well as creational laws and recommendations as well as of life and all existence. This means the human beings of Earth, when we take a look at the current situation, have driven themselves to the edge of a global catastrophe and are now well on the way to manoeuvring themselves definitively into it if overpopulation is not finally stopped and population is reduced to a reasonable level by birth control. The effective truth stands for the life-giving energy and for life itself, as is predefined in the womb of creational laws and recommendations. Life-affirming creational energy links human beings directly to the laws and recommendations of the comprehensive creation, and its power fills the entire Earth and universe. This is the same energy that wants to achieve harmonious concord with all life, with human beings, the planet and the universe. In this form, the life-affirming creational energy is an extraordinarily important criterion for the nature of effective creational truth and life itself. However, the untruth, the lie, is powerless and an enemy of the creational, and has nothing to do with the womb of truth. Consequently, the lie and untruth only lead a fictional life. However, those human beings who are dependent on this false life have removed themselves from the truth and from the care of creational laws and recommendations, as well as from the Mother Earth and the goodness of the universe. They are far from the truth, earth and the creational, and are therefore beings of anti-truth. Therefore they are also opponents of the creational warmth and care, because they can only assert themselves through evil, gavout, lying and deception, as well as by exercising might and practicing all kinds of degeneracy. All the catastrophes of all kinds triggered by the human beings of Earth and, in the final analysis, also by the vast and irresponsibly cultivated overpopulation, are casting the world and the entire population of Earth into the abyss, from which it will be very difficult for them to work themselves out. Also, all the global catastrophes triggered and induced by earthly humanity have only happened because of violations of the principle of truth, and therefore also of the creational laws and recommendations, instead of following the truly wise path of effective truth and the teaching of the true prophets, which has been delivered as the spiritual teaching or as the teaching of truth, the teaching of spirit, the teaching of life from ancient times. And therefore this truth is also given in the book the entitled Goblet of Truth, a first part of which, namely the teaching of Enoch, was also called the Cauldron of Life by the Druid Prince Merlin alias Merlin, and has nothing to do with the apparent grail of Christianity, which is only based on lies and deception, never existed, and therefore was not used by Joseph of Arimathea to collect the blood of Jmmanuel Jesus at his crucifixion. The true grail only existed as a holy place, and the composition was included in the Cauldron of Life, a writing of the teaching of the true prophet Henoch from the series of 7 of Nochademian. The document was delivered to the Druid Merlin the Laughing One, later known more generally as Merlin, as a transcription of the Pliarchariquet of the Triple Goddess. Merlin poured the transcription into the goblet, which was known as the Cauldron of Life, and misused as the basis for fabricating the Grail through Christian falsifications, which by no means can be brought into connection with this Cauldron of Life, because the Grail was a place with a spring, surrounded by trees and plants, where the Druids used to conduct their meditations. This Christian Grail falsification has been delivered down to the current time since its origination. However, once again in a further vast falsification which maintains that it was the goblet or grail of Jmmanuel Jesus, which Jmmanuel and his disciples drank from during the Last Supper, and in which the blood of Jmmanuel was collected by Joseph of Arimathea at the crucifixion. This enormous lie and falsification of the truth also applies to the so-called Holy Lance with which it had been said that Jmmanuel Jesus was stabbed in the side by a Roman soldier in order to find out if he was dead. Since then, this lance has been regarded as holy and carrying enormous might within it, capable of turning those greedy for might into rulers. Therefore it has been highly honored. In truth, however, this lance never touched Jmmanuel's side, because this is a Christian falsification manufactured only in the 8th century of the Common Era. Therefore it was only made into a religious cult object because of the falsifications of Christian machinations, as is also the case with what is called the Turin Shroud, which is supposed to show a figure of Jmmanuel Jesus, but is actually the death mask of an Italian merchant called Caesar Canova, and was manufactured by his brother Luciano Canova, who was involved in alchemy. Merlin attempted to pass on the teaching of Enoch through his influence on King Arthur or Artus, who was in his charge, and his pupil, and amongst the heathen knights of the Round Table, but this resulted in a miserable failure because the fierce clan leader Artus and his heathen knights could not come to terms with the teaching. Therefore, Artus seized the sealed Cauldron of Life and cast it into the sea with his own hands. Christianity has falsified the actual picture of the Grail or the picture of the holy Celtic meditation site of the Druids out of recognition. And the banal reason for doing this was the cowardly fear felt by Christian priests and believers in the face of the teachings of Celtic philosophy of belief.